What's up, summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. Today we have some fancy builds for you to make sure you're going to stomp your upcoming solo queue games. So are you ready? Then let's just get started. The very first champion is VEIGAR. And VEIGAR is a newly addition to the game, so don't you worry, it will take some time to get accustomed to the way he's going to be played. So as most of you have already realized, VEIGAR isn't really a champion that deals damage over time. He's more of a champion that sends you into the Shadow Realm within 1 second. And on top of that, he even provides a lot of utility. So playing around your cage is one of the most important mechanics on this champion. And maybe it's even the most important mechanic. So since he's playing around a burst heavy combo, it feels just very obvious to go for something like Electrocute, Brutal, Hunter Titan and Sweet Tooth. However, since we are VEIGAR and have a lot of AP later on, we can also go for Font of Life, maybe because we just don't need the damage. And since we have a cage almost every 7 seconds, as we reach the later stages of the game, we can just go for Weakness to apply even more damage multiplicators for our teammates. Another thing that's also quite nice about the VEIGAR is that he's flexible in multiple roles at once. He can be played as a mid laner, as a support and as an AD carry. Obviously, you still build AP items. So as this champion needs to primarily get into range of enemy champions, we have something special for him. So for stamina spells, you can normally go Flash and Barrier, however you can also go Ghost. And especially once we get to the items, you'll understand quickly as to why we go for Ghost. In the VEIGAR preview video we talked about the build in more detail. However, for this very specific video we decided to go with the Archangel staff build. The other build features a Rod of Ages to make you tankier, however we would be CDR or Ability Haste starved. So with this build we have Archangel staff as our first item. Our second item is the Deadman's Blade, and now you'll be like, what? Why am I supposed to build a Deadman's Blade on a VEIGAR? Doesn't make any sense. Hold up. Deadman's Blade is primarily built to get us closer to the enemy. It grants us percentage movement speed and a flat amount of movement speed. And all we want to do with this champion is get close enough to the enemy champions to force their flash with our cage ability. And since our cage is on a relatively low cooldown, we can do so on repeat and eventually the enemy team will run out of summoner spells. And with that, they're most likely going to die. So for our completed build, we go Archangel Staff, Deadman's Blade, Rabadon's Death Cap, into Void Staff or Lichbane and into then the other item we didn't build. And for the boots, we most likely go Lucidity Boots with a Righteous Glory enchant. Obviously in some circumstances you don't need as much movement speed, especially since you're running Ghost, so don't shy away from running the Stasis enchant. And don't be surprised about the Lichbane. Your champion gets so much HP, it's going to hurt a lot having this. And since you're spamming your first ability with a low cooldown, you'll have it all the time, which means more damage. But before we go to our question of the day, make sure to hit the sub button to never miss anything ProGuides ever again. And now for our question of the day. What's your favorite item in the game? Let me know in the comments below. And now it's time for our second champion. It's Renekton. For Renekton we want to take Conqueror, Brutal, Hunter Titan and Sweet Tooth. And now there's something special about Renekton. Renekton is super tanky thanks to his ultimate ability, so never forget that when you're about to jump on him on low HP, he might as well just heal up with his ultimate and then, well, you're in a bit of trouble. And to make sure you're in real trouble, in most cases he's going to run Flash and Ignites, so you might get turned on and instantly killed. And to make it even worse for you, Blade of the Rune King is absolutely broken on this champion. His Empowered second ability applies its damage 3 times, so if he auto-attacks you once into auto-attack cancelling it with his Empowered second ability, you lose a lot of HP. In the later stages of the game, an AD carry might even get one-shot by his combo alone, so beware. And now let's talk about the items. It might look a bit funny, but we might start the game with a Black Cleaver or a Blade of the Rune King. Then afterwards we build the one we didn't build before. And then afterwards we go Death Stance or Sterix Gage. And funnily enough, we built the other one we didn't build yet. And for our fifth item we just go Guardian Angel. Our boots are defensive boots with most likely a Gargoyle enchant. So if you look at the graphic it looks quite funny, but well, it is what it is. But as a rule of thumb, if you're going for the 1v1 kingdom, Blade of the Rune King is your best choice. However, if you want to go for the team fighting, Black Cleaver will provide more value in most situations because, well, you'll live longer. Nonetheless, on your 2-item spike, you're absolutely demolishing the enemy. And since we're speaking about demolishing the enemy, it's time for some Lucian. For Lucian, we want Conqueror, Brutal, Hunter, Titan and Sweet Tooth. In lane it's just too overbearing and annoying to deal with. For summoner spells, we want Flash, Barrier and sometimes even Ignite. The reason for taking Ignite could be that Lucian is a super strong lane bully, so play around your early pressure and make sure you abuse that properly. Even though Lucian was nerfed a few patches ago, his early game got actually buffed, which is kind of confusing because in early game he is a good champion. And even better for you, on a free item spike Lucian becomes a godlike existence and destroys everything in his way. So let's talk about the build here, which is quite special. For our very first item or rather component, we want to go for a BF sword. After that we go for a charge blade. The reason here is we want the cheap AD from the BF sword and then the crit chance from the charge blade. It grants us the most damage possible, but there's one thing we need. Blue buff. Without the blue buff we run out of mana all the time. And the very special thing about this build is the fact that we'll have the BF sword and at least a crit cloak before the dragon spawns. Which is a huge difference, because if we don't get a kill before the dragon spawns, we won't complete IE, we won't complete Essence Reaver, and we won't complete anything else but Mana Mune. So if you want the most damage, do it like this. Build the BF sword, build the charge blade. Afterwards, complete the Infinity Edge and then go for Navori quick blades. And then on your fourth item slot, you go Cyrilda's Grudge into a Bloodthirster. With that, you have basically infinite sustain and deal tons of damage. And for the boots, just build Gluttonous boots with a Proto Belt whenever you feel you need them. And for those who are wondering that we're building Navori quick blades before our armor pen item, think about it this way. If we have our abilities more often, our charge blade procs also more often, which means more damage, more passive damage and more damage overall, which means the bonus penetration from the Cyrildas isn't as effective at that point. However, in some situations we might make a case where Cyrilda's Grudge is better, but on average, in this build, on fourth it's the best. And since we're already speaking about the best, let's talk about the best queen of annoying you. It's FIORA in the Baron lane, yet again. However, this build is a bit special as it specifically teaches you how to play against tanks. For runes we just go Conqueror, Brutal, Hunter Titan and Sweet Tooth. In some situations you might even take the Vampirism rune. And for summoner spells we go for Flash and Ignite. But now let's talk about the champion. FIORA as a champion scales relatively weak, at least on a passive, with raw AD. As a consequence, we need to itemize into armor pen if you want to deal with tanks. I mean, you have all seen the Garen matchup and it's quite hard to kill the Garen or even chase him down because, well, he just runs away. Or in other situations, we simply don't have enough damage even though we're dealing true damage because of weak scaling on the passive ability. But to deal with this in the best way, we have something specifically prepared for you. So first, let's clear up an illusion. Blade of the Rune King is not an item that's good against tanks. The reason is rather simple. Blade of the Rune King deals percentage current HP damage, which means the more damage we deal to the enemy and the less HP they have, the less damage we'll deal. At some point it just deals nothing anymore. So when you're dealing with bruisers with low armor values, Blade might be the turning factor, but against tanks it surely is not. But there's something that is way better. On the first item slot we go for the Trinity Force, and on the second item slot we go for Cyrilda's Grudge or Black Cleaver. It depends if we need the HPs from the Black Cleaver or just want to slow from the Cyrilda. And on the third item slot we go the item we haven't built yet, so either Black Cleaver or Cyrilda's Grudge. Afterwards on our fourth item slot we go Death Stance and then afterwards Sterak's Gauge. For our boots we want defensive boots with a Proto Belt, Stasis or QSS enchant. And now let's quickly talk about why we want those items. So why Trinity Force and Black Cleaver at the same time? Number 1, the CDR is just insane to have, and number 2, the armor pen is quite a lovely thing to have on top of the Cyrilda. And even better, with the power of the Cyrilda, no one can escape from you. Even Garen can't get away, because well, if you hit your first ability with a super low cooldown if you hit it, he's permanently slowed, which means getting away is not so much of an option. And the best thing is, you're going to realize how much damage you deal with auto attacks. And last but not least, let's talk about some support. Here we have RAKAN. Why RAKAN? RAKAN offers one of the most reliable engages in the game. It's straight up not balanced and way too easy to pull off all the time. What can actually stop this champion? Not much, unless you see him from very far away. Because if he's too close, you best believe you're already dead. He charms you, knocks you up, and makes sure his team kills you. However, to make sure that the rest of your team isn't going to respond and instantly kill him, he wants Aftershock, Weakness to buff his team's damage, Hunter Titan for the CC reduction, and Pack Hunter or Pathfinder. For the summoner spells we go Flash Heal or Ignite depending on what we are playing with. If we can kill the enemy, we just go Ignite, and if we can't, we just go Heal. But now let's quickly talk about the build. On our first item slot we go for Rod of Ages. Why Rod of Ages? Well, with the scaled Rod of Ages, which means 120 AP, we get 192 extra shielding from our third ability. So casting it twice on an ally means 192 extra effective HP for them. That is a lot. And since we're also quite nicely scaling with AP, we need a lot more damage. And don't worry, there's even more to come. For our second item, we go Zeke's Convergence. It grants us and our AD carry or anyone who has the most AD a lot of extra damage. On top of that, since it grants MR and armor at the same time, it makes the health from Rod of Ages even more effective. And now we move on to the deal breaker. Especially into teams that feature a lot of AP, we can go Athene's Unholy Grail. This item is straight up not balanced. If you know how to properly use it, you can heal your teammates for so much. You have 2 heals from your shield and 1 heal from your first ability. And depending on what enchant you're going, if it's not the Gargoyle enchant, you have even more healing for your teammates. So don't forget about this item. Otherwise you can just go Ardent Censer and afterwards Staff of Flowing Water. And for the boots, in most situations you can go for a Gargoyle enchant or anything that helps your team. And that's it. Thank you guys for watching and hit the sub button for more builds in the future. See ya.